Welcome, Wargamers. My name is Doug with 2 Plus Tough, and this is the introduction to a new segment that I kind of want to get started on the channel, simply called Tough Talk, where it's not necessarily like lore related, but it is very relevant to Age of Sigmar and maybe 40k if we're talking about Games Workshop like as a total entity. The GHB 2020 has dropped. I got my copy a little bit late because I got the Warlord edition, and it's jam-packed with a bunch of cool stuff that I'm going to go more in-depth and in detail with this kind of segment, because again, not lore related, but allowing you to play the game and that kind of stuff. Age of Sigmar relevant for sure. And between the missions and the hero generator, there's a lot of things in this book that I'm excited for. But the minute that Games Workshop, in their promotional article they put up on the community site, ever since they put that post up that showed the table of contents so you can see what's going on here, I had this gnawing feeling and I wanted to make a video about it. So Games Workshop, if you are listening, please go ahead and just consider this when it comes to next year. For everyone else, just let me know if you agree, disagree, be civil, and give a good explanation for either or. I'd love to read it in the chat. So I want to start off discussion talking about the three ways to play the game, okay? You have open, narrative, and match. They've been pretty great about that since the first General's Handbook. And typically when we talk about these formats, we talk about them as if they are three different doors, right? You're either playing open, narrative, or matched, but in truth, it's more of like a Venn diagram where they bleed into each other just a little bit. For example, I like to play narrative games where I'm trying to build a character, trying to make cool cinematic moments happen, playing a narrative mission, but I use match play points. And as much as I've loved this format of having three different ways to play, things get interesting to me the more I think about open play and how because it is a finite group of people who design things for this game and this hobby, how the Age of Sigmar team responsible for the General's Handbook, what their efforts go into when it comes to the open play section, which quite frankly are largely ignored by a lot of the playing base. This year's open play section was really dominated kind of by this aerial battles format that was kind of brought up first in a White Dwarf magazine, but then it was like, they bolted onto it and cleaned it up a little bit for the GHB. And this to me is a great example of space and design and time that could have, been implemented in a better way. And by that I mean the player base for people who are actually able to play these sky battles is much smaller than the overall player base of the game in total. For example, if you're playing, ogres, what are you gonna do? Now, I'm not saying the aerial battle thing is a bad idea. It's a cool alternative way to get more value by playing different kinds of games from the models you've already bought. I'm super on board with that. I still want to test out the version in the GHB a little bit before I kind of give a conclusion to that in terms of like a review of the system itself. But I wanted to talk about what we could do with that space in the GHB instead. Games Workshop, please use the open play section in the next GHB to revitalize Path to Glory. And hear me out. The stated goal of open play is you can bring whatever you want, and that's pretty much it. It's always been a great place for either asymmetrical games where you have more than one, more than two players. There's, 2 versus 1, that kind of thing. Some fun missions and stuff like that. But the core idea has been grab what you want and throw it on the table and let's have fun. These can make for some possibly quick, very unbalanced game for folks who just like to roll dice like the days of AOS yore. And we can use that space in the book and kind of keep that mental idea, but right now I feel like it's wasted space. In fact, the last 2 GHBs that I'm looking at, you have army generators, which are really cool. I like that idea, and I like the mission generator, absolutely. But the kind of other things that have been bolted into that space just seem very incongruous with getting people together and throwing stuff on the table. And not only that, it doesn't move people towards anything else in the hobby. Path to Glory is an interesting format here, and if you're not familiar with it, you basically choose a champion, a hero from your battle tome. Usually, I believe they can't have a name like be a named character. Which hero you pick determines how many other unit choices you get. You build an army and it grows from there. You add units, you can give bonuses to veterans. You can do a whole lot where you build your force over time. And Path to Glory as it stands right now is an only digital supplement. Its only real value is the 4 narrative missions inside the book. There were a lot of issues with making the campaign fun for everybody because some starting rosters just drop kick to the face good. But one thing you can tell pretty easily is the idea of, I bought a start collecting box, I have these models, I just want to throw them on the table and start playing some games and get to kind of be plugged in with my local group. I think Path to Glory matches open play in a way that we haven't, really discussed before, and I really want it to be invested in more heavily. Stepping back from Path to Glory as a format, I want to talk about what it can do for the company, but also for you and I as gamers. Right? Path to Glory is a great gateway, right? A low unit count. You can start it with just a start collecting box. It can and often does act as a slow grow campaign, meaning you're not asking people to buy a $400 army, and even that's just like 4 of the BCR boxes, however expensive your army is. You're asking very little to start, and we're saying we're all going to grow together. And that's fantastic for store owners because it allows them to create a group to frankly sell stuff to. And it grows a little local community, and it does a whole lot of good things for people as they're trying to get into the hobby. The jumping off point into this is very critical because after a Path to Glory game, you have a story built around your faction. They did stuff. You gain like an attachment to these things that you've built and painted, which is something I hope dumps people towards narrative play. Or at least leaves them kind of open to it. Right? You've already done the things to invest yourself in this story, and let's take it to the next step further. But honestly, at the end of a Path to Glory campaign, everyone who's been participating now understands how to play the game, at least on a most basic level, right? So if matched play interests them, those things they learned port directly over to it. All you need is to learn army construction, which is a breeze in AOS, I think, and maybe use some unused allegiance abilities, because Path to Glory is a format where it's a little bit kind of janky when it comes to some allegiance abilities that weren't thought of when Path to Glory was released. My point in saying all of this is that I believe that Path to Glory makes for an incredible jumping off point to get people into this hobby. It really engages their creativity and tactical prowess because these missions, they're full narrative, right? They have weird objectives, asymmetrical stuff. You're trying to block your opponent from doing a thing. I absolutely love that kind of stuff. And then at the end of that, right, like let's say they devote all of the next open play section to Path to Glory, which is my dream. Let's say they do that. When you finish that section of the GHB, you are now introduced with 2 completely different ways to play that directly tie into what you learned in a Path to Glory format. You're telling people, hey, you know that like fun time you had over the last couple weeks, kind of slow growing an army? Now that you have a full force, look at these cool things you can do with it. And you have all your narrative play stuff there. You have all your matched play things. Again, everybody wins. No matter what kind of player you are, having a gateway format that introduces you and helps people rank up and that kind of thing is good for the hobby. Now, why did I start talking about the 3 ways to play? Well, Path to Glory exists, or at least kind of feeds into all of them, right? I mentioned before my Venn diagram thing, right? That these formats of play are not isolated. They kind of bleed into each other a lot. It's not really in matched play because there are no points and the scenarios are often asymmetrical. And it's not, if you're in faction, the only real narrative thing about it is those missions, as they reflect the story of one champion trying to sabotage another. Again, it's not a very heavy story thing, so you're not dampening anyone's experience when they do matched play. However, you're not necessarily playing a specific story, it's just a hero who collects an army under him over time. So any narrative or background paint scheme you add is all up to you. The onus is on you to do a lot of the creative heavy lifting. And so at the end of the day, you pick a hero, and a couple guys to go with them with no restrictions, and that's peak open play. It is the definition. You just pick a dude, a cool things to go with them. There's no points. Let's play a cool story and we'll make this happen. Even though it bleeds into narrative or sets people up to be able to play match play because now they're more familiar with the mechanics. They started small and learned the game over time. Like I said, it's not 3 different doors. It's a Venn diagram. Path to Glory, in my opinion, boom, square in the center of all of them. So anyway, that's my rave about Path to Glory's importance, and please for supporting it, right? As the dominant form of open play format. That's kind of what I want. All the other stuff is awesome. Open war mission generators, army generators, think of it. I love all of those things. But I truly think that the heart of Path to Glory is as a fully supported format is a winning strategy, no matter how you like to play. Open play is supposed to be the most accessible format possible, but it can be accessible and still drive people deeper into the hobby. And so to kind of conclude this video, because I'm a very practical person, I'm going to rapid fire a few ideas of what I'd like to see in a potential, GHB open play Path to Glory focused thing. A new way of determining starting rosters, because some start with way too many options. So for example, if you have a certain hero like on a behemoth or something like that, and they get, if they get too many rolls on the tables that you determine, what kind of units go with them, you can start out the gate with an overpowering force as opposed to some other factions. I want a metric ton of new missions to tell very specific stories that would actually make sense. So like on a champion's rise to power, they have to slay a rival, traverse an area, survive, length of time, number of turns, obviously, claim an artifact, that kind of stuff. And you can keep and rebrand the open war generator. That's cool. Maybe use that as a way to, manufacture starting forces based on the kind of unit that you're, when I say that, I mean the kind of unit that your hero is specifically, like if he's a behemoth, if he's a small dude, support character, that kind of thing. Maybe instead of adding units after every single game, set up milestones in an organized campaign where reinforcements come in. This makes purchases and expansions something you can plan and budget for. That's kind of a cool idea. We actually see that quite a bit is people who start getting victories in Path to Glory early can often have a runaway victory because more dudes simply means more power on the battlefield. And so you split it up into these kind of meta rounds, I'm going to call them. And this is something that Games Workshop, you already do with Necromunda, where you have, these 2 weeks are, here's the theme, here's the forces that are fighting, the next 2 weeks are this, and the following 2 weeks are that. You could easily do that. Every 2 weeks you get so many rolls on your followers table or something to that effect. It allows for very consistent increases in power level and things that you can tweak. Maybe we can integrate that sexy new hero generator y'all put together. I really like it. I know there's some people who are like, oh, I instantly found the most broken combination, whatever. I don't care about that. I couldn't care less. But it is a cool idea, and I want that to be refined a lot more. But more than anything, though, I think you could really get some cool value out of this is towards the middle or the late stage of your Path to Glory campaign, really encourage players to try other formats. And by that I mean, so if that GHB has siege rules in it, point people towards doing that. Maybe, just offer them, suggest to them, perhaps try a siege battle. And the same goes for matched play, even if it's just to expose people to what symmetrical missions are like, right? Forget about points. Obviously, we're talking Path to Glory, there's no points involved, but you're exposing people to thinking about the same game in very different ways. Hey, you have your army's battle tome. Did you know that in every single book there is a battle plan, at least one, but sometimes up to 3 for your faction? Very narratively themed missions to give you the most flavor for your army. Try those. My point is, Games Workshop, you did all the work of creating all these incredible resources throughout the several years of General's Handbook that we've had. There's a lot of really cool things in there. And what I'm saying is those resources are the building blocks for a fantastic Path to Glory campaign. But the next step is to just put all those things together. You just got to put them together like puzzle pieces, and that will give us stuff we need. Tons of missions, ways of balancing our starting factions. Not so much the things afterwards, but the starting ones I think are really the more important part. It creates tons of ways to get into the hobby, exposing us to different ways to play, and kind of breaking down the barriers between I'm a narrative player, I'm a match play player. Get rid of those. They can be different formats. I'm just saying, I think it would help with the stigma for each and every one of them by having people start in an open play section and then just going towards what excites them. As much as I like the idea behind meeting engagements, I do really think that a fully supported Path to Glory format would not only benefit the community by exposing, new players and bringing new folks in, and, of course, like gradually building up an army over time, which is kind of what the format allows for, but also, frankly, the bottom line, because more sales happen if more gameplay is accessible. And it's true that while open play is right now the most accessible format, you go, you buy one model, your $35 box of skeleton warriors, and with that, boom, you got an army, okay? Like, to play the most basic version of open play possible. But we can take that and we can use that to expand in different directions and really get the most out of it. Not only that, but it creates a situation where older players can use the opportunity to slow grow and create new army projects and things like that. Now, I will say right now, I did take part in a Path to Glory campaign with the rules that are out right now, and it's with my good friends over at Rerolling Ones, and I'll leave a link down below to, I believe it's their playlist, with all the videos from there. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say Path to Glory, go watch some of those videos and check it out. They're a lot of fun. They're just fun, and if you think that they can't give you challenging and interesting moments, you will be surprised by the outcome and the finishing rules of some of those games. Specifically, the one with me versus Jack and his corn were just superb endings. They were the best things ever. And if you're enjoying Path to Glory the way it is right now, that's awesome. Keep at it. I really, really want you to do that. What I'm simply saying is it can be a format that is so much more than it is right now. We need more missions. We need more ways of building armies. The game has evolved past that $5 like supplement that came out forever ago. And so I just wanted this section, specifically the open play section, because it's what I think the beating heart of Path to Glory could be, is at. And so let's evolve ourselves with that in terms of like the format, Path to Glory evolving with the game in a regular supplement. GW already does it. I'm just asking you to double down, right? And I think that's a pretty reasonable request. But let me tell you, actually, let me ask you, what are your thoughts? So did my TED Talk that was somewhat more rambly than my other videos make any sense? And do you have something that you want to see in the General's Handbook, or specifically in the Path to Glory format? Leave in the description down below, down in the comments. I'll go ahead and engage with you there. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Happy wargaming.